What if I told you that the grand monuments of our past were never built by human hands? Not in the way we've been taught, at least. Today, we're going to dismantle centuries of accepted history using nothing more than simple mathematics and logic. And by the end, you'll question everything you thought you knew about the world we inherited. Our journey begins in France, in the city of Reims. Standing in its center is one of the most breathtaking structures ever created. Reims Cathedral. Its stone vaults climb toward the heavens as if defying gravity itself. The facade is adorned with thousands upon thousands of sculptures, each one a work of art so detailed, so precise, that modern sculptors study them in awe. This is not just a building, this is a symphony frozen in stone, a testament to something far beyond what we understand. The official story is straightforward. Construction began in 1211. And here's where it gets interesting. We're told this architectural marvel was completed in just 80 years. 80 years. Let that sink in for a moment. Now, picture the world of the 13th century. No electricity to light the worksite after dark. No cranes to lift massive stone blocks into place. No trucks to transport materials. No computers to run structural calculations. The most advanced power source available was a horse. The most sophisticated tools were hammers and chisels. In such a world, could you build something like Reims Cathedral in 80 years? Could you build it in 200 years? The very idea strains credibility to its breaking point. We're being asked to believe that people who lived in crude dwellings, who fought with swords, who wrote by candlelight, somehow mastered construction techniques that baffle modern engineers. We're supposed to accept that the art of building reached its absolute peak while everything else around it remained primitive and undeveloped. Does that make sense to you? Because it shouldn't. But Reims is not alone. It's not some strange outlier in history. It's merely the first thread we're pulling in a tapestry that, once unraveled, reveals a pattern historians would rather we never notice. All across Europe, all across the world, these colossal structures stand as silent challenges to everything we've been taught. Gothic cathedrals, medieval castles, ancient palaces, each one a testament to engineering prowess and mathematical precision that seems impossible for its supposed era. We, living in the modern age with all our technology, with 800 years of supposed progress behind us, look at these buildings and cannot answer the most fundamental question. How? How did people in what we call the Dark Ages achieve such perfection? Every stone in these structures is cut and fitted with flawless precision. Every arch calculated to distribute weight in ways that have kept these buildings standing for centuries. Every vault designed with an understanding of physics and material science that we're told didn't exist at the time. Think about what that means. These weren't just pretty buildings. They required profound knowledge of geometry. They demanded understanding of structural engineering. They needed expertise in material strength and load distribution. These are disciplines that supposedly were in their infancy during the medieval period. Yet somehow, at that very moment in history, they were being applied with a mastery we struggle to match today. Here's the contradiction that should make you pause. We're shown images of medieval life. People writing with quills by candlelight. Farmers living in cold, drafty huts. Soldiers fighting with primitive weapons. A world that looks, by all accounts, technologically backwards. Yet in this same world, at this same moment, structures of impossible complexity were being erected. Buildings that modern engineers, with all their tools and training, study in wonder, trying to understand how it was done. And the timeline makes it even more absurd. These cathedrals weren't built slowly over many generations. Many of them went up in what, by construction standards, should be considered record time. We build modern skyscrapers slower than medieval masons supposedly built Reims Cathedral. Without power tools, without industrial equipment, without even basic safety regulations or efficient transportation. Does any of this sound believable to you? Let's move past admiration and ask the practical questions. The questions that matter. The construction of a cathedral like Reims is, first and foremost, a logistical nightmare. We're talking about millions of tons of stone. That stone had to come from somewhere. Where were the quarries? How were the blocks cut with such precision? How were they shaped to fit together so perfectly that even today you can barely slide a knife blade between them? But the real question, the one that demolishes the official story, is this. How were these massive blocks transported to the construction site? We're not talking about a few stones. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of them, some weighing several tons each, without railways, without trucks, without even paved roads in most cases. Moving a single multi-ton block of stone without modern equipment is a monumental undertaking. It requires teams of workers, specialized equipment, and careful planning. Now multiply that by hundreds of thousands. Add in the fact that these stones had to be lifted to great heights and positioned with absolute precision. The historical record is suspiciously silent on these details. There are no accounts of the massive supply chains that would have been necessary. No records of the thousands of workers who would have needed to be housed, fed, and clothed for decades. No descriptions of the transportation networks that would have rivaled modern logistics in complexity. We're simply given dates and told to accept them on faith. History presents us with a civilization that lacked basic technologies, yet somehow created logistical operations that would challenge modern societies. A society that couldn't efficiently transport goods over short distances somehow moved mountains of stone across regions. A culture that struggled with basic engineering somehow calculated structural loads with perfect accuracy. The contradiction is too enormous to ignore. And it's not isolated to one building or one region. It repeats across Europe, across continents, in structure after structure. What if those dates were given, those convenient timelines, are nothing more than attempts to force inexplicable artifacts into a fabricated historical narrative? What if Reims Cathedral and buildings like it aren't products of the medieval period at all? What if there's something far older, something far more advanced? The legacy of a civilization we're not supposed to know about. At first, this sounds like fantasy, but the deeper we dig, the more the official version falls apart. The contradictions pile up, the logistics become more impossible, the technology required becomes more advanced, and we're left with a mystery that goes far beyond construction techniques. This is a question about the very nature of our history, about what's been hidden from us, about who or what came before. And to understand that mystery, we need to look at another pattern. A pattern so consistent, so repetitive, that it can no longer be dismissed as coincidence. This pattern involves fire, destruction, and convenient explanations that don't hold up under scrutiny. There's a template in history, a narrative device that appears with suspicious regularity. It goes like this. Before the magnificent stone cathedral was built, there was a simpler wooden church on the same site. That wooden church, we're told, burned down in a tragic fire. And from those ashes, shortly after, rose the grand stone edifice we see today. Reims Cathedral follows this exact template. We're informed it was constructed on the ruins of a predecessor that conveniently burned down just 1 year before the new construction began. 1 year. Just enough time to clear the site and start building a structure that supposedly took 80 years to complete. This story repeats itself across Europe. Dozens of times, hundreds of times. Nearly every major cathedral has the same backstory. A fire, a wooden predecessor, and then, rising from the ruins, a stone masterpiece that far exceeds anything that came before it. Doesn't that strike you as a bit too convenient? A bit too neat? It's as if there's a universal script, a pre-written explanation that gets inserted into the historical record whenever someone needs to explain why a magnificent building suddenly appeared. The fire narrative solves several problems at once. It explains why construction began at that particular moment and location. It creates an illusion of continuity, linking the inexplicable stone marvel to a more believable earlier structure. It provides a reason for a massive construction project to commence. But from a mathematical standpoint, from the perspective of probability, this pattern falls apart. Think about it. How many catastrophic fires would need to occur at just the right moments, in just the right places, to account for all these cathedrals? And how convenient that each fire was immediately followed by a construction boom and the sudden appearance of master craftsmen who could build something far superior to what was destroyed. If these fire stories are fabrications, convenient lies to fill gaps in the historical record, then what about the people credited with building these structures? Let's look at the architect supposedly responsible for Reims Cathedral. His name was Jean d'Orbais. At least, that's what official history tells us. But as soon as you try to learn more about this man, you hit a wall. Who was he really? Where did he receive his training? Where are his blueprints, his calculations, his architectural drawings? Where is his school of thought, his students, his body of work beyond this one cathedral? None of it exists. His biography is a collection of vague references and assumptions, a patchwork of guesses designed to give a face and a name to something that otherwise has no clear origin. Even more bizarrely, Jean d'Orbais is credited with working on buildings supposedly constructed centuries apart. He's linked to structures founded in the 6th century, then allegedly begins work on churches 600 years later. This doesn't describe a real person. This describes a mythical figure, a name inserted into the historical record to provide authorship for an anonymous masterpiece. Did Jean d'Orbais build Reims Cathedral? Or did he simply find it already standing, and his name was attached to it by later historians who needed someone to credit? A name from a more recent, more understandable era, grafted onto an ancient structure to make it fit into their timeline. This pattern of phantom architects repeats throughout history. Brilliant builders whose existence is supported by almost no evidence beyond the buildings themselves. No personal records, no contemporary accounts, no progression of work that shows their development as craftsmen. Just names attached to impossible structures, like labels on museum pieces. So we have buildings that defy explanation. We have suspiciously convenient fire stories that serve as their backstory. We have architects whose biographies crumble under scrutiny. All of this could perhaps be blamed on lost records or poor documentation, if not for one thing. These are just circumstantial observations. The real evidence, the proof that destroys the official narrative completely, isn't hidden in ancient stones or lost manuscripts. It's hidden in numbers, in mathematics, in population data that historians themselves provide. Because there's one thing you cannot fake, one system that operates by immutable laws: mathematics. And when we apply basic mathematical principles to the official historical timeline, everything collapses. Historians can invent stories about fires and genius architects. They can create elaborate narratives and convenient explanations, but they cannot argue with mathematics. And mathematics is about to show us something that will change everything. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take population growth statistics from a well-documented period, the last 200 to 250 years. This is data no one disputes. Official records, census information, demographic studies. We'll use England as our starting point. Since the beginning of the 19th century, England's population has grown from 9 million to over 65 million people. A massive increase, but one that's well documented and undisputed. Similar patterns exist everywhere. Spain's population has increased by almost 20 million in just the last 70 years. We see consistent growth rates across the developed world. These numbers are facts. They're on record. They're not controversial. Now here's where it gets interesting. We're going to take those same growth rates and run them backwards, not into the future, but into the past. We'll apply the exact same mathematical model that shows us how populations grew and use it to calculate what populations would have been in earlier eras. We're going to use their own numbers, their own mathematics, to check their own version of history. This is not speculation. This is not theory. This is simple arithmetic. And the results are absolutely devastating to the official historical narrative. Let's begin the countdown. Using recorded rates of population change, we watch the numbers shrink as we move backwards through time. Rewind just 100 years from today to the beginning of the 20th century, and global population drops significantly. But that's just the beginning. By 1886, according to these calculations based on official growth rates, the entire planet would have had approximately 928 million people. By 1817, just over 200 years ago, that number falls to 314 million. Already we're seeing figures several times lower than what official sources claim. But we continue. By 1748, only 106 million people remain on the entire Earth. Think about that. That's roughly the population of modern Japan spread across every continent, every country, every city and village on the planet. And we're still in a period when official history tells us great empires existed, massive armies marched, and grand cities thrived. Now let's take a truly massive step backward. The year 1610. According to our mathematical model, using the same growth rates historians accept for more recent periods, the world's population at that time would have been just 11.8 million people. Fewer people than live in Moscow today, spread across the entire world. This is during an era when we're told the age of exploration was in full swing, when empires were expanding, when large-scale wars were being fought, when major cities existed across Europe, Asia, and the Americas. But the mathematics says there weren't enough people on Earth to make any of that possible. And now we arrive at the moment this entire investigation has been building toward. The year 1200. The period when, according to historians, the greatest Gothic cathedrals were being constructed, when Reims and Notre Dame and countless other architectural marvels were supposedly being built simultaneously across Europe. Continuing our calculation with the same relentless mathematical logic, we arrive at a number that should shake the foundations of everything you believe about history. According to this model, based on official demographic data, the entire population of planet Earth in the year 1200 would have been approximately 18,700 people. Let me say that again so it's absolutely clear. 18,700 people on the entire planet. That's the population of a small town, a single residential complex in a modern city. That's fewer people than attend a typical football match. And this is when we're told thousands upon thousands of skilled workers were building hundreds of architectural masterpieces across Europe. When quarries were operating to extract millions of tons of stone. When massive transportation networks were moving materials across regions. When architects were designing structures of impossible complexity. When entire cities existed with populations in the tens of thousands. The mathematics doesn't just question the official story, it obliterates it, completely, utterly, without possibility of reconciliation. Who quarried the stone? Who transported it? Who carved it? Who lifted multi-ton blocks into place? Who designed the structural calculations? Who fed all these workers? Who housed them? With 18,700 people on the entire planet, spread across every continent, how were hundreds of cathedrals being built simultaneously? The answer from mathematics is simple and undeniable. It's impossible. Completely, absolutely impossible. The official version of history, which claims a virtually non-existent population was more technologically advanced than we are today, collapses under the weight of basic arithmetic. If the people of that time physically could not have built these structures, then we're left with the most important question of all. Who did? Mathematics has destroyed the alibi of official history. It has proven, beyond any reasonable doubt, that in the 13th century there simply weren't enough people on Earth to build the cathedrals. Not even close. Not by orders of magnitude. This isn't speculation or theory. This is mathematical fact based on the very data historians provide. This conclusion, as shocking as it may be, leaves us with only one logical possibility. If these buildings were not constructed by the people of the supposed medieval period, then they were built by someone else, something else, at a different time entirely. The answer, as radical as it sounds, is that we're looking at the legacy of a previous civilization, cathedrals and temples already standing, already ancient, often partially buried in soil, suggesting some kind of cataclysmic event in the past. The buildings in these photographs don't look newly constructed. They look old, weathered, reclaimed. Surrounding them in these images is the primitive life of the 1800s. People in simple clothing, horse-drawn carts, basic tools. The technological contrast is staggering. These are not photographs of construction projects. These are photographs of people rediscovering and reclaiming ruins. A civilization recovering from something catastrophic and finding the remnants of what came before. We're looking at a world that has been rebuilt, a world recovering from a global event, and these magnificent structures are the surviving artifacts of a previous age. An age that some call Tartaria. An age that official history has buried under convenient lies and fabricated timelines. If this was truly a single, unified civilization, we should find common markers, shared symbols, a recognizable signature left by the real builders. And we do. All across the world, from Europe to Asia, from cathedrals to temples, we find the same symbols appearing again and again. One of the most striking examples is the griffin. Official history treats this as a mythical creature that randomly appeared in multiple disconnected cultures. But when you look at the evidence, you see the same style of griffin carved into buildings separated by thousands of miles, the same artistic approach, the same symbolic meaning. Buildings from Athens to Persia to France all display similar imagery. These aren't coincidences. This is a language, an architectural code, a signature left by a civilization that built on a global scale, a unified culture with advanced technology and shared symbolism. We're told these were separate peoples who independently arrived at similar solutions, but the evidence says otherwise. The evidence points to a single source, one global civilization. All these buildings, regardless of what country they stand in today, are links in the same chain. Parts of a vast system that we're not supposed to understand, that we're not supposed to question. Visual evidence supports this theory. Recurring symbols confirm it. But our most powerful tool remains mathematics. It is already proven that the population in the 1200s was effectively zero, that any large-scale construction was mathematically impossible. This fact alone overturns centuries of accepted history. But if the mathematics is correct, and it is, then it leads us toward an even more disturbing conclusion. It points to something fundamental about human history, about the timeline we accept, about when our current civilization actually began. The calculation suggests there was a point in the recent past when there were almost no humans on Earth. The thought is both fascinating and terrifying. It means our current civilization is young, very young. It means that all of recorded history before a certain point is either fabrication or misinterpretation of what came before. A chronicle of the previous world, the world of the true builders. We're on the edge of a discovery that changes everything. Our calculation for the 13th century exposed the impossibility of the official narrative. But why stop there? If the mathematical model works going back 800 years, it should work going back further. What happens when we continue? What do we find in the deeper past? Let's take our experiment to its logical conclusion. Let's see where this mathematical countdown ultimately leads. The answer may be more incredible than anything we've discussed so far. We've exposed the impossibility of medieval construction, but now we go further. We continue our reverse calculation, moving deeper and deeper into the past. After the 1200s,
where we found only 18,700 people on the entire planet, the numbers continue to plummet. The year 1000, then 900, then 800. With each step backward, humanity becomes more ghostly, its presence on Earth shrinking to a statistical error. And then we cross a critical threshold. We reach the year 600 AD. Mathematics, based on official demographic data that historians themselves provide, delivers its final verdict. In the year 600 AD, the population of the entire planet Earth would have been 3 people. 3. Not 3 million, not 3,000, 3 individual people. This is not an exaggeration. This is not a metaphor. This is the direct mathematical result of applying official growth rates backward through time. We've reached the end point, mathematical zero, the moment before which there is nothing. 3 people on planet Earth. This figure presents us with a choice, a fundamental fork in understanding. 2 paths, each of which completely rewrites what we think we know about the world. The first path is to take this literally, to accept that humanity as a species appeared in the middle of the 7th century AD.
That everything before that moment, ancient Rome, ancient Greece, Egypt, the pyramids, all of it is fiction. This option is so absurd we can dismiss it immediately, but that leaves only the second path. If the mathematics is sound, and it is, but the result is impossible, then the initial assumption must be wrong. We've been assuming human history is a continuous, smooth process of growth, an unbroken line stretching back into deep antiquity. But what if it's not? What if there was a break, a rupture in the timeline? This calculation means something happened, recently, in our history. Something massive, something global, an event that nearly wiped out the planet's population, that erased collective memory, that reset civilization. Our mathematical model breaks down because it's trying to look beyond the event horizon of this cataclysm. It's trying to peer into a world that existed before everything changed, a world that was deliberately hidden from us. This idea of a global cataclysm, a great reset, is the master key that unlocks every mystery we've encountered. If we assume such an event occurred relatively recently, perhaps in the 18th century, around that symbolically significant date of 1776, then everything falls into place. The incredible cathedrals and castles aren't constructions of the Dark Ages, they're surviving remnants of a highly developed pre-cataclysm civilization. The lost construction technologies weren't lost in antiquity. They disappeared along with the world that created them. The population mystery resolves itself. The rapid growth of the 19th and 20th centuries isn't a continuation of an ancient trend. It's a demographic explosion of survivors, humanity rebuilding from near extinction. And the entire official history we're taught? It's a chronicle written after the disaster, a narrative constructed to explain the new world, to make sense of the incomprehensible ruins, to incorporate impossibly advanced structures into a primitive medieval context, to create phantom builders and convenient fire stories and fabricated timelines. All these cathedrals, these castles, these monuments, they're not the legacy of medieval peasants. They're silent witnesses to a world that came before us, a world that was hidden, a world that was deliberately erased from our collective memory. They stand as proof that our civilization is not the first on this planet, that our history is much shorter than we've been told, and much more tragic. The numbers don't lie. The facts are clear. They've always been here, waiting for us to pay attention, waiting for someone to ask the obvious questions, waiting for someone to do the simple mathematics that destroys centuries of deception. This is just the beginning. The investigation continues. There's so much more to uncover about what our history is really hiding, about who we really are, about what came before, and about what might come next. The truth has been buried, but it's still there, waiting to be found. And now, you know where to look. The official story is broken. The timeline doesn't work. The population numbers are impossible. The construction is inexplicable. The architects are phantoms. The fires are convenient lies, and the mathematics proves it all. Everything we've been taught about our past is built on foundations of sand, and those foundations are crumbling. What does that mean for us? for our understanding of who we are and where we came from, for our beliefs about progress and civilization, for our assumptions about human capability and technological development. It means everything we thought we knew might be wrong, and the real history, the true story of our world, is stranger and more profound than we ever imagined.